and welcome to Why AI Leaderboards Missed the Mark, the panel, the webinar. My name is Sabrina Nordland and I'm here today to be your host. I'll steer the conversation with some questions that I've prepared on leaderboards, what their current limitations are, what they should or maybe shouldn't be used for, and crucially, where can we iterate on them to improve? To have this conversation, I've recruited some of the brightest minds that I know. So I'd like to thank Nora, Oliver, and Hua for joining me today. Though I've prepared some questions, I really do want this to be a conversation. So I'll give you all a chance to introduce yourselves in a moment. But firstly, I'd like to say that I've reached out to you all intentionally because I know the work that you do. And I think together, we can have quite an insightful conversation about leaderboards. So first and foremost, Nora comes from Prolific's own sciences team. She couldn't say no to me really, but she is a researcher who was directly responsible for a recent user experience leaderboard, and evaluations are an area of work she is continuing to work on. ... Watch this space. Oliver is coming from Cohere. And he's also a first author on the Leaderboard Illusion paper, a piece of research which I think has already started the conversation about leaderboards that we're hoping to continue here today. So really excited to have him here. And Hua researches alignment at the Ray Center at the University of Washington. Her work is dedicated to ensuring that AI has an ethical and aligned future, and I'm really interested to see how her work can complement leaderboard iteration and her thoughts on leaderboards more generally. Before we jump in, any of you who have joined us, it is a conversation, so feel free to drop any questions you have in the chat. I'll try and moderate that and bring those in if you drop them in there. So with that, we can jump in. I know I've just given a high-level introduction, but could we please kick off the conversation with each of you just sharing a few words on what your relationship to leaderboards is generally? Do you use them? Have you worked on them? And Nora, I will pass to you maybe to start us off.
Happy to kick us off. Thanks, Sabrina. So my work at Prolific is within evals, most primarily at the moment. I'm working on a leaderboard that is iterating on the user experience leaderboard that you alluded to. We're calling it Humane, and it's an evaluation of LMs with humans kind of at the core of it. It's more on the subjective side as far as evals are concerned. A lot of the evaluations that have proliferated the space have been more on the technical benchmark side of things, with data sets like MMLU and SweBench, and very much geared towards technical capabilities. So what we're trying to achieve with Humane is kind of map out more of the eval space and include humans and kind of capture their experience with LLMs and how they do on very kind of practical real-world tasks. And outside of Humane, I've worked on various safety-oriented evals with UKAC in the past, more geared towards kind of capturing various problematic behaviors in LLMs, more oriented around collusion, when, say, AI safety via debate is being used. So I have kind of experience around in evals from a few different angles. Just to kind of segue into the Leaderboard Illusion paper, we found it really helpful to... me and my colleague Andrew have been working on the Humane leaderboard. We read the paper and made quite big waves, and we've been trying to incorporate the feedback and the criticism to LMArena in our Humane eval. So happy to go into more detail around this later.
Would you mind sharing a bit more about what your relationship is with leaderboards, and if you use them, if you have thoughts on them, and more generally?
Yeah, sounds great. Yeah, thank you so much for the intro and the question. So while my research focuses on human-centered AI, I do have some experience on human-in-the-loop data annotation and curating the data set, but I'm not that keen on building or creating the leaderboard. But usually I used the leaderboard in my research on like maybe probably two main reasons or aspects. The first one is understanding what's the core standard tasks that the latest AI or large language models are really focusing on. And the other one is about understanding which are the best models that could perform the task pretty well. So those are the two aspects I usually use the current leaderboard on. So that is a brief introduction of my relationship and my experience with the leaderboard.
Wonderful, thank you. And Oliver, would you like to share your perspective?
Yeah. Hi everyone. I'm Oliver. I'm a research scholar at Cohere Labs. So thank you so much for having me here to be here. I'm excited to be here and looking forward to our discussions. So my work focuses a lot upon evaluation, like from human eval to automated eval, like to benchmark design, like to how to build like a rigorous scalable evaluation method to better track model progress and guide developments. So my relationship to Leaderboard is kind of in between. As an LM researcher and a daily user, I do check Leaderboard like regularly, mostly to keep up with what the models are trending or leading the pack. Like it's a useful reference to stay informed. But on the other hand, I'm also working at Cohere as we are a model development company. So I'm also involved in actually participating in the leaderboard, like submitting our models to the leaderboard. Yeah.
This is all very diverse perspectives on leaderboards, which is exactly what I wanted. And feel free to jump in, each and every one of you. I guess to start us off, the title of the webinar is Why AI Leaderboards Miss the Mark. So I'm curious to hear all of your thoughts on what the greatest limitation of current leaderboards is, in your opinion. Who wants to jump in first?
Yeah, I think I can get first. So basically, I think there are two types of kinds of leaderboards there. Like the first is kind of more traditional static kind of leaderboard where like a model gets ranked based on how well they do perform on a fixed set of benchmark. But with LLM, those old benchmark get set really fast. It could be like models are too good these days, are generalized so well. And it also could be because of the data contamination or overfitting. So people aren't really like satisfied with those anymore. That's why we started seeing like more dynamic live leaderboard. So they update all the time and try to give more like a real time picture, like collect fresh prompt get the real world user feedback. But those come with their own issue too these days. Like sometimes the evaluation, like metrics are not substantial enough, or transparency could be a problem. Yeah.
I'll jump in. I pretty much shared everything that Oliver said. Leaderboards have been very much geared towards kind of static evaluation of models, and they don't incorporate the dynamic nature of model releases and how they improve over time, and also just leakage of data has been accounted for in very few leaderboards. And there have been quite a few papers showing that LLMs are very sensitive to how the questions are formulated. So there's definitely memorization happening there, which has kind of contaminated a lot of the leaderboards. So the trust in leaderboards, generally speaking, has been going down. And yeah, as Oliver said, that everything has been shifting more towards a dynamic evaluation that is harder to game, captures more of the real-world usage of LLMs, and less further away from kind of academic knowledge snapshots capabilities view of LLMs. And I'm personally quite a big fan of more dynamic, kind of procedurally generated evals, kind of like RKGI, and kept trying to distill the ingredients that we're really interested in. So RKGI is a reasoning benchmark that is trying to be memory resistant or memorization resistant, should I say. And I think this approach to capturing the genuine capabilities that LLMs have is quite promising, in which we can fully kind of track how they, what kind of tasks they're currently stumbling on, and in which ways are they going astray, and further kind of shining a light on how their reasoning capabilities translate to tasks like these. Sorry, Hua, over to you.
Thank you so much, Nora. So I do agree with Oliver and Nora's point, especially on the dynamic evaluation parts. Well, before we talk about the missing point and the cons of the leaderboard, I do agree that leaderboard actually have some advantages that actually can help conceptualize the task into some standard benchmark and metrics and encourage all the models to address these problems in a quite a short time. But I also think that there are multiple limitations and missing points on the leaderboard. The first of all, like Nora and Oliver also mentioned, the dynamic and static, the static property of the leaderboard, so that it cannot be naturally adapted to the very complex real world situation, so that it's only focused on the specific well-structured task, but not covering the dynamic and very contextualized real world task, human needs, and situations. I think that is one of the big limitations. The second one may be the task, although some leaderboard really cover a lot of maybe hundreds of tasks, but they are still quite narrow tasks regarding the complex real world different types of problems, so that these might also result in overfitting of the model to the specific task. So I think the narrow task and the overfitting might be the second limitation. And the third one, which usually be ignored, might be the phenomenon that we call the reward hacking, meaning that usually people or models really focus on achieving the goal or having a higher number or the score on the leaderboard, but don't care about how the models actually reach to the goal. So they might find some unintended shortcuts or unintended path to achieve those goals. So I think if we emphasize too much on the leaderboard, that could potentially also encourage some reward hacking problems or issues that might result in the safety issue. So I think those are maybe the three aspects I can consider for the missing points on the leaderboard.
Yeah, all very strong points. Nora, did you want to respond?
I can just jump in with an adjacent point. Recently, Meter published findings of a study where they found that experienced developers that use AI tools actually were slowed down by them or took 19% longer on tasks than their internal kind of estimation of it is. So there is a discrepancy between the actual measurements and the subjective experience of using AI tools as well. And I was wondering whether you stumbled upon that study and whether you had any thoughts around it.
All right. I don't think anyone else maybe has seen that study yet, but it is definitely a really interesting one, and one that really shocked me when you shared that with the team. I guess it also kind of speaks to my next point that I wanted to discuss, which we've talked about a little bit so far, but I guess I want to dig in a bit more of we established that maybe evals are not necessarily measuring what matters most, but I guess I'd like to know a bit more about your opinion about what is exactly missing from leaderboards. What would we like to see in the future? Where do we think they should go to improve?
I can get us started. Oliver, go for it.
No, go ahead.
All right, I'll get us started. So I think there's an important differentiation to be made here around evals and leaderboards as well. Sometimes it's useful to formulate an eval as a leaderboard, and sometimes the eval is actually quite complex and captures a lot of different metrics that are really hard to summarize in a leaderboard. So with that said, I think what I think is lacking and what I would like to see more of is more real-world, domain-specific evals that capture real use cases and really provide more insight into how models actually do in the real world, where they're being used by experts in various different domains for their very specific tasks. So I think this is ramping up as I see more of this work happening, but I would like to see more of it. And as I said previously as well, I think evals is a very large space, and we've just scratched the surface of what we need in order to get a comprehensive overview of the model capabilities, and also on the safety side as well. I think I've not seen that many benchmarks around safety.
Yeah, I would say, I agree with what Nora said. I say, yes, eval are actually most of the time measuring what matters to itself, So the thing is like each eval usually look only one or two perspective like this, but this helps to qualify the progress and compare more than head to head. But there's no single matrix or leaderboard that can capture everything perfectly. And a lot of time, like the evaluation, some evals doesn't really represent real world generalizations. Even some model like perform very well on some leaderboard.
Yeah, agree with Nori and Oliver's point, especially regarding the real world eval. So I think what I really want to see is that like following the real world points, maybe like we can add like the current leaderboard with some contextualized or dynamic factors into evaluating. For example, by adding some specifics like a set of different diverse situations or context, other than just giving one specific task. And the other ways or method we can do probably like involve human in the loop, although we don't need a large set of humans, but like maybe involve several diverse humans inputs into the eval could also make our evaluation more robust and more generalizable regarding current leaderboard. And another point I would also love to see that we know that usually large model or AI models are they have a lot of random need, like a randomized needs, like the different temperature, different like the random seeds actually result in like really different scores. So rather than just seeing one specific score, which might be a cherry picking of the best one in some cases, maybe it is better to show some distribution of several different cases so that the evaluation and the leaderboard's outcome would be more robust and more faithful rather than just cherry picking the best one. So I think direct on top of our current leaderboard, maybe focus instead on the 1 point or score, but rather on the distribution would maybe a better way of a small improvement on the current practice of leaderboard.
Yeah, definitely agree. Just a follow-up on this. I think all the different labs approach evaluating their models in a slightly different ways, sometimes making it really hard to actually compare them. So having a standardization of sorts would actually be really helpful to know that we're comparing apples to apples on some of the popular benchmarks. So seeing more of these kind of evaluation protocols, if you will, or science of evals kind of emerging will be really exciting.
Agree.
Very interesting points. I'd like to talk a little bit more about kind of like the flip side of leaderboards. We've talked a lot about how they should be built, current limitations, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts as people who have used them, who have worked on them. How do you think people, just like the general public, should be using leaderboards? Is it something they should be using? Is it something they should be playing with? How much should it be feeding into their own decisions? Are there specific instances where they're more reliable or not? Curious to hear your thoughts. I'm going to pick one of you if nobody unmutes. Oh, Oliver, thank you. You're up.
Yeah, I can go first. Yeah. I think people shouldn't put too much weight on the exact ranking in the leaderboard. Like most of the time, being number one or number two doesn't make a huge difference. So leaderboard should be seen as a helpful reference. Like if you have a specific use case and the leaderboard actually measures the feature that matters most to you, then it can be a reliable indicator. So when it comes to leaderboard, also when it comes to leaderboard, I think we shouldn't just focus only on human evaluation leaderboard. Like human preference is only one single angle, right? Like some people sometimes people might even prefer an incorrect answer. So I think those static leaderboards or those more leaderboard based on more objective metrics are still really valuable to people. I think people should see this from a whole picture, not just focus on one specific leaderboard. Yeah.
I'm happy to supplement my thoughts and agree with Oliver's point on not to focus too much on the ranking. And I love to answer this question because it's human-centered and it's thought about how general users and humans should use the leaderboard. I think from my understanding, humans or beyond the developer, general users might use or take advantage of the existing of leaderboard from both cognitively and behaviorally. saying like cognitively, I think actually users or people could use Leaderboard to learn about LM, like saying what's the core capabilities and what existing task actually LM could perform really well. So that actually from a user, as a user, I actually use a Leaderboard to know a lot about, oh, the current LM could really do well on coding related task or simulation related task as well. So that I think it's a good way to gain the knowledge about the LM, knowing what's their core capability, what's the state of the art of their performance. I think this is a good way of maybe increasing the AI literacy for improving cognitive, knowledge. And the other one is regarding the behavioral one, where people could probably choose some of the top models, and echoing to Oliver's points that I think end users don't really care about, oh, this model is performing 98.1, 97.5. This means really less to them. They might just pick some of the top 10 or top 20, which is easier for them, which they rely more, or which they think that they get more familiar with them, and then choose one of them to help them, assist them in some real world tasks like writing or coding. So I think that is really the way users want to use those models to achieve their real world task. And I think Leaderboard can really be helpful for end or general users in these two ways.
Yeah, I'll quickly share my thoughts as well. I definitely agree. I think most people that use AI models in their day-to-day tasks mostly rely on their first-hand experience with the models and how well they do on the tasks at hand that they rely on them for. I think the general public, I would say, are primarily disinterested in leaderboards. I think leaderboards are interesting and a curiosity amongst the technical kind of AI audience that are curious to kind of dig into the differences and see how they do in various different benchmarks. So there are quite a few of them right now. So I imagine the technically oriented audience shapes their opinions about LLMs or any kind of AI models across different benchmarks and kind of synthesizing all of the different aspects of evaluating the models. And yeah, from my experience as well, I tend to rely mostly on my experience with the models on the tasks that matter to me as a way to kind of gain confidence in their capabilities.
Yeah, that's definitely been my experience as well. I would like to talk a little bit about the third person or interest, I guess, in leaderboards, which is the companies building the LLMs that are being evaluated in the leaderboard. So I guess I'm curious to hear how prevalent you guys think gaming of leaderboards is, if that's something people should be concerned about. How would we mitigate it? And how do we balance that legitimate interest and need for pre-testing with then preventing statistical cherry picking? I think that's probably, if somebody has joined this webinar, probably one of the things that they've read about and are curious to hear your thoughts about.
I'll kick us off on this one. So yes, I think as a whole, I think the labs that are developing the models don't try to game the leaderboards, but it happens as a auxiliary goal, not directly, but they're incentivized to get to the top of the leaderboards. That makes their models look good. So there is this indirect kind of motivation to do well on them. And we've seen a few examples of companies, whether intentionally or not, trying to game the leaderboards, especially the LMArena one with Meta releasing or testing quite a lot of private models before choosing which ones to release. And it does raise a question of if it's easy to know how to do well on a leaderboard, how much of its influence does it lose in the process? The same old question of Cohere's law, and how do we protect against this type of gamification, which is kind of built into the incentive structure around evals? I'll be curious to hear your thoughts around it, because it's very much an unsolved problem to be kind of gaming resistant.
Yeah, I think for those more static traditional academic benchmark, it's very hard because models these days are trained on huge amount of data for both pre-training and post-training. Maybe there's a very high, even although like I think like most of the developers are researchers, they are not trying to game like a mixed test set in the training set on purpose. But there's still a high chance that some eval data get mixed in, or the training data is really, really similar to the benchmark or the eval set. So in terms of the cherry picking or pre-release, I think the pre-releasing testing makes some sense. It's not totally some nonsense, but there should be a clear and transparent policy around it. It's fine to like if everyone gets to do it, but it become a problem if only a few players in the game like some exclusive access or gets to test way more than the others. Then it will become like cherry picking for them, and it will gives a certain exclusive player, a few players, a huge advantage in the leaderboard.
Yeah, I agree. I also think that gaming is common nowadays, especially like when there are more and more models, it's hard to compare. So leaderboard is more like acting as a comparing or showing platform that show all the LM and then comparing of which LM is better in some specific situations. Well, and the leaderboard, yeah, I think it's hard to avoid this gaming, but what we could do probably is that making the leaderboard more dynamic and diverse and situated more real world cases, so that it is not just one score and comparing with a score. Instead it needs more real world inputs and contextual inputs, so that the results is more subjective and then not just competing for some scores, but also we can probably improve the leaderboard with for example, some hidden test set, so that it won't be used in some pre-training or post-training of the LM, or we can even add some adversarial testing or some stress test, so that the evaluation is more robust and more objective, instead of just chasing for some numbers or making it as a game. I think there do have some strategies to improve the situation a little bit, but in general I also agree that avoid the gaming is important, but it's really challenging nowadays as well.
Excellent. We're nearly at time. If you don't mind, take another 5 minutes maybe, so I can ask one last question and hopefully leave on an optimistic note. I'd like to ask you all what new approaches to evaluations are you excited about and do you think are underexplored? Where do you hope to see this going next, I guess?
I can kick off the start. For me, I think at this time, instead of introducing more benchmark, I think it's time to reflect on the ones that we have already proposed. Actually, every year, each AI conference publishes thousands of new benchmark. I would be more excited about taking a step back and studying whether there are any common properties of this evaluation shared, or if there's a pattern how people design new benchmark, what will make a benchmark easy to saturate it, and why do some benchmark get saturated faster than the others? And if we could isolate some of the effects, it would be better to understand what makes a good benchmark or evaluations. That'd be really helpful. And another thing is I think evaluation is important to for the next step. What could really help especially since LM are getting good at so many things. We have to figure out what I really want to measure and what's the most important for the next step toward if you want a more intelligent models. For example, does testing on harder and harder math problem grad level, PhD level, Olympic problems, that actually really help push things forward. Yeah.
Yes, I can offer my thoughts quickly as well. I very much agree with what Oliver said. I think there has been some efforts around this with BetterBench that tries to survey the benchmarking landscape and tries to kind of consolidate the best practices there. But yeah, I would like to see more rigor in how we design evaluation benchmarks, and I would like to see us gaining more insight on how to control for memorization and the various different aspects in which we're not really capturing what we want to capture, and having kind of non-contaminated metrics and rubrics that give us really clear results or precise results in what we're trying to measure. So I guess one side of it is just getting better at the measurement problem, and the other is around covering more ground. As a few of us alluded to in the past, a lot of the benchmarks have been clustered around technical capabilities that are very easy to capture and to score the models on, and are automated and kind of a low-hanging fruit. But I would like to see the field maturing and giving us more insights into how these models actually would do in the real world.
Yeah, I appreciate Oliver and Nora's points. For me, like from a human-centered AI researcher's point, I would be super excited to see that the current leaderboard can incorporate more contextualized and the dynamic evaluation rather than just a static standard benchmark. So it's mainly because I think that the leaderboard would be really helpful when we are developing LM, so that they can perform, like the performance is like increasing dramatically. But it's usually the time some tasks would reach to a plateau, and then it's hard. They actually already reached to some pretty good performance, like 90% or even more percent of the performance. So that at that point, I think it's more important rather than just still increasing the score, but like focusing on how we can apply these models into the real world cases and truly benefit the general users or the humans. So at that case, I think leaderboard might not be that helpful in that increasing stage, so that we need to incorporate more real-world applications, scenarios, and context, so that the leaderboard can naturally expand it to the real-world useful cases. And I think that would be a really exciting extension of current leaderboard situation and their applications that can really help for and benefit the more humans in the world. I think this would be the one I would be really excited to see in the future.
Amazing. You left us on a very optimistic note. Thank you, Hua. And that brings us to the end of our discussion. Before we say goodbye, I'd like to really thank each and every one of you for your time and your insights. If anybody watching wants to keep up with Nora, Oliver, or Hua's work, you will find links to their LinkedIn in the emails you got confirming your registration for this webinar. I will also be sending you an email of the recording of the webinar later. You're welcome to share it with anyone who might be interested. On that note, also, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'll make sure all the information is also in the description of the YouTube video. And I'll also do a quick plug for Prolific's AI newsletter before we head off. If you want to be informed about future webinars or projects that we're working on in this space, I'll include a link to register for our newsletter in the same email and in the description. And with that, thank you all so much for attending, and I hope you will join us again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.